I roto I tēnei whakaaro, mā te kōrero ka mōhio, mā te mōhio ka mārama, mā te mārama ka matau, mā te matau ka ora. E nā manu kora ki, e nā korokoro tui, e nā kākātara hei. A tēnā rā koutou katoa e rā mene mai nei, I runga I te whakaaro kotahi, kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou. A tēnā koutou e hara mai ki te tautoko I te kaupapa o tēnei ata. Kia koutou nā kai karanga e hara mai ki te whāreki o koutou whakaaro, kia mōhio tātou ki tō mōhio, ki tō marama, ki tō matau. A koe nā te āhua o tēnei rā, kia puta mai o koutou whakaaro, kia mōhio tātou, he aha te matau, e puta mai I a koutou I tēnei rā. Koe nā te pai, ka te tiro haere au, kia koutou e noho mai nei, te nui nā o koutou nā ahurea o te ao. Koe nā te pai mō nā kai mahi ki te tiro haere ki o koutou matau, e puta mai me pēhea te pai ki te whiwhi iaia I koe I tētahi atu mahi I roto I tō rātou mahi. Me pēnā pēā te whakaaro ki a tātou katoa ki te whakarongo ki wēnā kōrero e puta mai I a koutou I tēnei rā. Nō reira, kia koutou, tēnā koutou. Huri nō nā mihi ki nā rangatira. Kia koutou, Geoff, Marian, Welby, nā mihi hoki kia koutou. Kei te mōhio ko koe, kei te tīmata tō tātou kāro kōrero I tēnei ata, e puta mai tō matau kia tātou, me pēhea te haere mō tātou katoa I roto I te ao, huri I tēnei wā. Huri nō kia koutou katoa, nā kaimahi e whakatū I tēnei rā, kia koutou katoa, ki nā tauira, ara, e mahi ana o rātou mahi, kia mōhio tātou katoa ki tō matau e puta mai kia mātou I tēnei rā. Nō reira kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, a kia rā tātou katoa. Me mihi hoki ki taku rōpū tioriori e puta mai tō tātou waiata I tēnei ata. Anei tētahi atu whakatau ki te whakamutu I tō tātou kōrero I tēnei ata. E hara taku toa I te tōtaki tahi, inari he tōtaki tingi. Nā mihi hoki kia koutou, tēnā koutou, a kia rā tātou katoa. Now I see a lot of strange faces looking at me and probably wondering, what was he talking about? So let me enlighten you. My first proverb that I used this morning talks about through discussion comes awareness. Through awareness comes understanding. Through understanding comes knowledge. And through knowledge comes well-being. I wanted to do that because the purpose of Postgraduate Week is all about that. It's about the discussions that you have to come on your journey, about understanding the awareness of what's around you and how you go about developing your new knowledge, and then how it's going to contribute to society. The second part is about acknowledging that I talked about is the cultural intelligence. and how important that cultural intelligence are to employers of today. and how cultural intelligence can contribute to the future. And so I touched on that briefly. But it's important to hear what knowledge you have in all the presentations that's going to be made today. So I wish you well with that. The second part was to acknowledge those that have passed before you, that have made it possible for you to be here. And to also enlighten us with your new knowledge that you have been developing over the time. And I think it was appropriate to be able to do that. But in closing, I think one of the key things, and I acknowledged all the people that has contributed to this week, that it is not by your own individual efforts alone that you may succeed, but by the collective efforts of those around you. And I know that there's been a number of people that have contributed to your journey. And when I look at that, there's not only the people in this university, there's also the people outside of this university, such as your partners, your family, who have tolerated your behaviors at home, who had to withstand all the grumpiness because you couldn't achieve something. But that's what research challenges you with, is to go through all of these different behavioral patterns that you're going to encounter. And one of the good things about that, though, is that one of the key things it does is, and to consider, is that is it going to contribute to the well-being of our communities? The other reason why I raise cultural intelligence is that one of the key things that I'm aware of is that when research applications are being made, they're being turned down because of one aspect, and that's looking at, when I talk about cultural things, is meeting the requirements of vision mātauranga. And I think for a lot of researchers that are doing that, you probably need to be aware of that document because it plays a big part in funding by organizations these days. So I want to stress that particular aspect of vision mātauranga. I'm also working with Research Innovation Office to actually develop some protocols in how we can get researchers to better understand so that they have more success in getting their funding for their research. So, nō reira kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, a kia ora tātou katoa.
Thank you very much, Donald, for that welcome. It was very precious, so thank you. Set the day and the scene very well. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Marion Jones. I'm the Dean of the Graduate Research School and have a lot of the staff here who have been absolutely amazing in setting this up for you all. First of all, I have to do some housekeeping details. And Annalise will tell me off if I don't get it right, so I'd better do it all right. Okay, so first of all, on this book, in page 44, the student responsible for poster P9 should read Van Thou Ven, and the faculty should be Health and Environmental Sciences. Now, the registration desk you all will have seen, which was just there in a WG 306 foyer, and there'll be staff there all day. If you've got any questions, they'll be there till about 3 o'clock. So please don't hesitate to go and see them. Now, the oral presentations and the creative exhibitions will take place in this room and also in WG 701, 702, WA 224A and 224B, and 505 and 616. Now, what's really important to know, and I know you always like your lunch, however, there is an artefact from one of the creative exhibitions which will be out in the foyer, WG 306, for viewing at lunchtime. So do go. It's a very special exhibition that will make sense when you've seen, I think, the poster. It was the presentation. So please refer to this book on page 8 and 9. You'll find maps to find each of the rooms. And on the back pages of the booklet, 72 to 75. So please don't get lost, otherwise just over there at the foyer registration. The posters P1 through to P9, which are outlined in the booklet, pages 36 to 44, are on display also in the foyer, with poster presentations taking place from 1 till 1:30. So students whose posters are on display will be on hand to talk about their research and answer any questions at this time. And you'll be given the opportunity, which is really important, that means you have to go and look at the posters, to cast your vote for the best poster presentation from 1 to 3 by dropping a ballot form completed into the ballot box at the reception area. So please attend and please do your voting. At the end of the day, at the completion of the 3-minute thesis competition for AUT, the finals, which are all detailed in this book. This is an amazing little book for you, and it's not too big to carry around. So the students will be awarded after that for the competition, as well as the best abstract and the best poster presentation. So please come and join us at the 3MT finals and the awarding. It's really important that the people who are presenting have a wonderful audience like this sitting there to see and help them. Catering, which I'm sure that, I know I need a coffee already, morning tea, lunch, afternoon drinks, nibbles will be catered for in WG 306, the foyer. And we ask that you have your name tags displayed at all times, which I haven't. These are particularly handy for our caterers. The toilets are located outside each venue, so please check the map so you know where you are. And in case of emergency evacuation, please make your way immediately to the nearest fire exit. And staff members will direct you to those assembly points. Now, the thing that we often don't do at the end of the day, and we've lost a bit of paper in our booklets, please find the evaluation forms. We really do use them. We look at what you say. We improve things by what you say. So please drop all your evaluation forms again at the registration desk any time in the day. So I think I also have to invite Professor Geoff Perry, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, up to talk.
Okay, kia ora and welcome. I'd like to extend a warm greeting and welcome to all of you to what is the 11th annual Postgraduate Research Symposium. And you're here today to the final event of Postgraduate Week. I'm told that the registrations are almost 200, which is a record for us. I'm also told that there are major traffic jams on the roads coming in, and in fact, Professor Marion Jones just got here in time. So some of the others are still wending their way through the traffic. AUT's research performance has been critical to its development as a university, and steady growth in research revenue underscores the university's capabilities and the impact that our knowledge is starting to have on society and on the ability of us to understand the context in which we live and how we can make a difference is becoming marked. Inspired by innovative teaching and stimulated by research, AUT creates a high-quality learning experience that inspires students to achieve their aspirations. AUT continues to be a university for the changing world. It is outward-facing, promoting intellectual debate, curiosity and discovery, determined to be engaged with the current and future issues of national and international importance to communities, industry, business and the professions. The major focus of presentations today is on our postgraduate researchers, you, and the rich variety of your research. Presenters will be modelling their research for their postgraduate peers as well as supervisors and other staff. The program outlined for the symposium reinforces both the scope and quality of postgraduate research here at AUT across a diverse range of disciplines. Therefore, we ask that you make the most of the day and support as many of the presenters as you are able. At this point, I would like to thank Professor Marion Jones and the Graduate Research School team who have made this week and today possible. The concluding event in the symposium is the final of the 3-minute thesis competition for doctoral and master's students. Students must present their research within a restricted time limit of 3 minutes and use only a maximum of 1 PowerPoint. It's actually apart from being a competition, I actually think it's a wonderful thing that everyone should think of whether they're in the competition or not. Because can you encapsulate the key question, the key idea that you are investigating in 3 minutes? If you can, then you've got the focus that you need to be able to do the fuller research. So it is a fascinating competition that's grown internationally. And the winner of the Masters competition will go on to represent AUT at the Inter-University competition at Victoria University of Wellington. And the winner of the doctoral competition will represent AUT at the Asia Pacific competition taking place at the University of Queensland. So the day looks like it's fantastic. There's a great agenda. So I wish you all the best for an enjoyable day and hand you back to Professor Marion Jones. Thank you.
Now, I've got the great pleasure in introducing the keynote speaker, and he is Welby Ings, Professor of Graphic Design at AUT School of Art and Design. And I introduced Welby with great pleasure as a colleague and friend and someone that's fantastic to work with. He's earned his PhD here at AUT in 2005, and we're lucky to have held on to him. And he's not allowed to go because I've told him that. Not before I go anyhow. He has spent his career creating and disrupting. And though you would probably argue that these are two sides of the same coin, he creates in the sense that he is an award-winning designer, playwright, filmmaker, whose work has been shown at Cannes Film Festival and has been shortlisted for an Academy Award. He is also a habitual disruptor in that he challenges traditional models of teaching and learning and champions disobedience as a key trait of the agile mind. His recent book, Disobedient Teaching, which I have thoroughly enjoyed, discusses 5 features of post-heroic leadership. 1 is growing other people. 2 is creating high-trust environments. 3, encouraging critical conversations. 4, I can't even count now, changing heroic practices. And the last one, story and change. His own research career is a great example of the value of intellectual agility. He is a leading authority on topology in film, has worked with short films, music videos, television advertising, has contributed to queer theory and mental health research, and is a member of the Design Institute of New Zealand, and has been elected a Fellow of the British Royal Society of Arts. His own brand of disruption is working. This morning, Professor Ings is going to share his thoughts on how disruption is productive in research, how we can see failure as an opportunity to invigorate our work, and how risk can bring about new discoveries. Please join me in welcoming Professor Welby Ings.
Kia ora mai tātou. Ngā mihi nui nāku kia koutou katoa. When you follow an introduction like that, it's a little hard. You feel that you're going to come down a few notches. So, just bear with me, because like everybody in this room who's presenting today, I'm a bit nervous. And sometimes people tell you that gives you an edge, and sometimes it doesn't. However, I had a look up this morning at the word symposium, because I vaguely, in my half sleep, I thought it had something to do with an orchestra, but of course that's a slightly different spelling. But it's a really interesting word. It comes from a behaviour among the Greeks that they didn't drink with their meals. So you had the meal and then you went away to drink and discuss in a convivial manner intellectual ideas, which doesn't mean that you don't hold off your thinking until you've had some kai out the back, but it does mean that the idea that we would share things with people that we would share thinking as part of sustenance, as another stage of sustenance, is a really interesting idea. And I think in academia it's been used to break the stranglehold of the conference being a place where you present stuff. Because if it's any good, it's not about presenting stuff. It's about sharing things and growing. It's about that you walk out of this a better person, a more rounded person, a more supported person than when you walked in. So can I just ask, can you put up your hand if you're presenting today or presented last year? Could you just put up your hand? Thank you. Thank you, you people, because you do a really important thing. And we understand that this is going to be difficult. But what you're doing is you're sustaining, you're feeding something. So for your generosity, we appreciate it. Thank you. And if you're nervous, don't worry, we all are. You've got us, we're at your shoulder with it. Okay, so I'd like to start with this. I want you to imagine that you're at home, you're at the dinner table, and somebody has invited a very smart 16-year-old who's never been to university. And somewhere through dessert, they go, so you're doing a degree, you're doing a research degree? What's that? What is research? Now, I know to a 16-year-old, research is a thing you say to your teacher, can I go to the library to do research, meaning I need to have a smoke. But really, what is it? What do you mean when you say the research? Because that's what combined, that's what joins every one of us in this room. If you've got a piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to have a go at writing it down. If not, I'm going to ask you to tell it to the person next to you, so you're going to have to do it. I want you to get it. I'm going to give you a minute of silence to get a definition for what you mean when you use the word research. So what is research? Okay, 1 minute of silence. Go. And thought. Okay, stop. What I want you to do now is, there's going to be another minute, 30 seconds each. I want you to share with the person next to you your definition of research. Make sure you get a chance to hear their definition too, so it's not all just about you. Okay? Okay, go. All right, third time, right. Just put up your hand if the definition you had was identical to the person next to you. Okay, put your hand right up if it was identical to the person next to you. Put your hand, you're not wrong, put your hand up. Okay, have a look around this room. We all are connected by this idea of research, and yet only a few people have an identical framing or framework for understanding what that is, or definition. So that means that arguably, perhaps research is a slippery thing to deal with. Maybe it's not something easily defined. And you know, in truth, internationally, it is something that we wrestle with. We wrestle with. And to get a definition, because on one level, it gets so mushy, it's everything. And on the other level, it gets so prescriptive, it shuts out a whole lot of stuff. So here's an interesting thing. I don't have a... Oh, hang on, let me just go back before I give you that. I'm unashamedly, I don't support things like PBRF. I don't think that they're a good thing. I think they dumb down the nature of research. However, in our struggle to try, when we brought in this research valuing funding thing, we had to try and somehow in New Zealand to get a definition for what research might be in a university. And I'd say that although I don't like the system of PBRF, I'm hugely admiring of a definition that this country put together in 2006 that is now widely quoted all over the world. They tried to do what you just did. They tried to say, what is research? And this is the definition that we came up with. That it's original. Okay, so it's not just chopping up something from somebody else's essay. Its idea is to contribute to two things. To knowing and to understanding. This is a point that you made when you spoke at the opening. It's doing two things. It's not just feeding knowledge, it's also growing understanding. Okay. And in some disciplines, I would actually argue in all disciplines, but in some disciplines, cultural innovation and aesthetic refinement. So this is New Zealand not being afraid of those two territories and actually saying they are integral to it. Then, this is the bit which says lonely. Okay, it's independent, which means that you have to be in the tractor seat. You're not riding on the trailer behind this. It's independent. It's creative. It's cumulative, which means it grows and develops and adds to and adds to and adds to itself. Often long-term, which we know about, with specialist knowledge about theories, methods, information concerning the field of inquiry. And the last one, which is why you are examined, whether that is in a formal examination or you're writing papers that are reviewed by peers, it has to be open to scrutiny. So when you go, I'm sharing the inner working of my soul and now I've done research, thank you, give me a degree, you're not doing it under this definition. Because we have to contribute to knowledge. We have to put out in the world. If we're doing it, our role is actually to make something better for other people, to give out. So we've got a really, arguably very inclusive idea of research. The difficulty I have with it is that oftentimes when we talk about research in universities, we're asked to do this kind of thing. We're asked to look at what that research looks like numerically, or what it looks like in terms of its structure. And I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think it feeds the way we understand it, but there's something missing. See, research isn't just a noun. It's not just a thing. It's also a verb. It's a thing we do. It's a process. And it's a human process. And so I would argue that it's when I look back across it, I mean, the other day I counted up and I started supervising research theses here in 1997, and it's 2017 now. So that's 20 years and I feel like an old man. But the interesting thing in it was that I counted up, there were over 80 theses that I've had the pleasure of working alongside people as they drew those into the light. You know, and the statistics don't answer what I think maybe research is. See, I think it's as much emotional as it is intellectual. When people fall over, it's not necessarily that the methodology failed or that there was something wrong in the statistical analysis. It has to do with the fact that this is actually a very tough thing for a human being to do, and especially if your values are caught up in it and you're trying to do the finest thing you can. But we don't have a great deal of talk about it. So what I'd like you to do is just I'd like to try another thing. If you think about your last research project, so it might have been or if you're a long way through your research project at the moment, and you had to describe a metaphor to describe the journey of that research. If you had to make up a metaphor to go, this is what my research feels like, and you liken it to something. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute, 30 seconds to think of a metaphor to describe the nature of your journey. What's it like? My research journey is like what? Okay, just do that now, quietly in your head. I'm going to ask you a question about that definition. How many of you did your definition have something to do with disruption or that there was something shaky in it? Just put your hands up. Put your hands right up. Now stand up, please. Stand up. Stand up. Gosh. And good on you for having the guts. Thank you. Okay, sit down. So, do you know, that's what I've found too. I've found it inside myself, but I've also found it when I'm working with people who are trying to develop theses, that oftentimes they are they're not reliable beasts. We set them up oftentimes to be risk averse. That's why we fill in PGR1s or PGR2s. You know, go, oh, I've got my research question, I've got this. And we're going along like this going, this is just going to be oh shit. It's not a doddle. It's not a doddle. So I've looked at, these are three things that I've come up against in it. The first one is that for some people I've found that research is a departure from the expected. In other words, they set things up, you know, they're data, and everything's put in place, and then suddenly the data starts taking them away from where they thought it was going to be. So that what seemed to be something projected forward easily got skewed. So I'm going to do this with an ad, sorry, but so it looks metaphorically something like this.
This is love I see. All I think about is you and me, and all this could be. We are meant to be. There's no better dream than you and me, and all this could.
Nouvelle Citroën C3 avec nouveau moteur essence PureTech, 250 km de plus avec un plein.
So it set itself up as a dream relationship, and we didn't expect that it was going to pull us away from where we expected the journey to go. The second one is a little bit more brutal, and that's the one where there is a disruption for it from somewhere that we didn't expect it to come. And oftentimes the two that are talked about a lot in research are it's a financial disruption, the money runs out, there's nothing there, your partner is made redundant, something happens, there's a disruption to the financial substrate that you wrapped around the research. Or the other one is that the supervisors bugger off, that you're partway through and suddenly your supervisor leaves and you're left there holding your thesis going, I'm holding my thesis. Okay, so that one there, those things will often come quite suddenly. They're not so, they don't kind of merge up on you, maybe metaphorically a bit like this. But the third one is one that, don't worry, I haven't tried to match these ads with things. I took a long time to find the damn things. Okay, the third one is I would think of as betrayal, and that's where you've set something up and you think you have everything in place, and something fundamental that you trusted to be there, didn't remain there. And these are very common. So things like a relationship breaks down on you, or that you've got your health fails on you, okay? Or on a technical level, you've set this all up and suddenly you discover that your findings don't support your hypothesis. Okay, so this is like a deep, deep thing. Two of those are working on an emotional level and one of them on a technical. So maybe looks like this.
Good afternoon, madam.
Yeah, I'm sorry, officer.
Can I see your papers, please? Hello. Mummy in a bit of a hurry, was she? Step out of the car, madam! Step out of the vehicle now!
We've all known that child. Sometimes they're an adult, but okay. So that is where something that we were trusting in to be there wasn't there, or that we trusted it to be other than what it was. So that is why the title for this was Surviving Vesuvius. So we might plant our thesis on productive ground under a beautiful mountain, imagining that it's all going to go very well, but very rarely does it. But those are not the things that we put in the brochures when we're advertising the degree, and they're often not the discussions we have at the beginning. But they are the reasons that a lot of things fall apart and then have to be repaired and recovered as you go on. So I'm going to look at three things in this talk. So there's basically three ideas. If we get time, we might have to, we'll see how we go. All right. So the first one is this. Master's and PhD degrees are called in the vernacular domain divorce degrees for a reason. They have a very high fallout. People pay a very high price for them in terms of relationships. The second one, I wanted to have a look at why you need to be in love with a question that counts. Okay, and these two are both related to things that fall apart. And the third one is more about common cunning, but it's where people use the time here to actually set themselves up for the world that they're going to from here. So it's how they work, how you strategically work the system while you're doing your PhD to your advantage, because it is an interim step into something bigger. So, number one, just wanted to have a look at this, at the divorce degree. One of the things I often say to, when people come and want to talk about doing a degree, I'll say, look, come and have a cup of tea, and we just talk about their ideas. But in there, invariably, I ask them who loves them. Now, I know you go, that doesn't sound like a very professorial thing to do, but it's actually very important. In other words, what it's saying is, who are the people who are going to care for you as you go through this 10 months of selfishness or this 4 years of selfishness? Because that's what you're going to do. And you're going to need them. And that this journey, while we say at graduation, oh, you know, you people went on the journey too, those are the survivors of the journey. Many people you're asking to come through with you on this journey, if you don't look out for them and you're planning it, if you don't discuss this carefully with them, and if you don't understand, or at least get a sense of what this is going to entail, you're going to end up in trouble. So essentially, if you ever look at this, your divorce degree is basically a kind of a, you can understand these university education came up out of the monasteries. So it's a highly, if you look at it, it's a highly monastic, you understand about poverty, obedience, devotion, you get ecclesiastical robe at the end of it, you know, you get a cleric's hat, if you're lucky, that looks like a cow pat. Okay, so you've got a, we have something that is essentially very singular and pulled into itself in a world that you've lived that's probably expansive. So most of your relationships and networks have been because of this. But this undertaking is asking you for a period of time to pull in. Because you're trying to singularly get an idea. A thesis means to position an idea pulled together and positioned. So what we know is this. We know that the two most common reasons that a thesis will fall over is that there are financial problems, or that there's poor supervision. But in my experience, while those are there, equally there's some other things. There's this one. The emotional world falls apart. So this is normally family or very close relationships. The second one is that you get isolation and doubt. So we all doubt. Every person who's going to give a talk today is doubting that they should be here. Okay? Every time we do it. We try and pretend otherwise, but we do. We go, maybe I shouldn't even really be in this degree. It's a common thing for people after they walk out of the PhDs to go, maybe I didn't really deserve that. You know, it's very common. It's very, very common. We all wonder if we're imposters in this strange world of academia. We all wonder. And if you don't, there's something wrong. Okay. We all wonder because academia is set up as an idealized world and we are a real entity. So we worry about whether we're going to do it. And then we worry about the fact that, you know, you come to conferences and people give a highly edited story of their success. And we go away thinking, I'm a schmuck. You know? No, they were edited. It's different. It's different. But it's very easy to get caught up in that. Or you get intellectual bullying occurs where people, somebody does a lecture or a reading group or something, they put a text down in front of you and you go, I have no idea even what the idea was in the first paragraph of that. Okay. And so we set up strategies that overturn that. Like we might set up collegial little reading groups, or we might talk with each other about things. We might joke away the fear and then try to come in at it again. We set up strategies because we're human beings operating in an ideal system. But if you don't, these things will both turn over a thesis quite easily. People die inside. Their hope and their strength dies. So the last one here is instability, is not understanding at the outset that the thesis is unstable, if it's any good. So Kleining and Witt are a couple of Teutonic theorists who talk about, they say something that I think is really helpful. They go, if it really is research, it's probably going to be unstable at some stage, because by its nature it will be going into the unknown, or it will be surfacing the unknown. So when we try to set up research that's risk-averse, we actually set ourselves up an illusion. So if you have a look at this idea of instability, you know, if you go anyone from Heidegger, who talks about thought, you know, what is thought-provoking hasn't been thought yet, so it turns away from us. We're like this, trying to go after it, and we are drawn into its withdrawal. It's while we're pursuing an idea that we're thinking. When we've got it, oh, okay, got it, brain stops. It's in the pursuit of thinking that our richness occurs, but we are in pursuit. We don't have the security of holding it. But if you go to another area, you know, Titian talks about, the artist talks about when he touched the surface of his paper before he started work to investigate an elusive world just beyond reach. So there's an artist talking about the same thing. Or Keats, who talks about negative capability, where a man, excuse his gender problem, but where you are incapable of, this is capable. This is, he says, is a productive, the most productive state. When you are capable of being in uncertainty and mysteries and doubts without any irritable reaching after fact or reason, when you can dwell productively in the unstable, that's the fertile ground. And Ersol talks about this ability is to tolerate anxiety and fear and to stay in the place of uncertainty in order to allow for the emergence of new thoughts and perception. And your thesis is asking for new knowledge and new understanding. If you have a look back at that research thing, that's what it's asking for. To get there, we navigate the unknown and the unstable. It's not a safe ride. Unfortunately, what happens in our education system leading up to this, you have had ticked your ability to read and perform to formula, to agenda. What's the learning outcomes? What's the criteria? Let me do that, let me do that. And suddenly we're here and you go, actually, that's not going to get you there. And so the very reward system that has brought you here betrays you. And something else, something deeper, has to be able to come up, or else you're left floundering around with tedious research and predictable findings that offer nothing significant that's new. So this is an interesting thing, because you probably have just been following the issue about the funding around mental health in New Zealand at the moment. But here's an interesting thing that we know in universities at the moment. There is a higher prevalence of psychological distress and mental illness amongst this demographic than there is amongst the general population. We also know that individuals who experience mental health difficulties often want to pursue tertiary education. And they see it because it will not only potentially increase their potential for employability, but also might have an effective impact on their health and well-being. That's a great way of looking at a university, that it might in fact be a healthy, good place to be, not a destructive place. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a kind of honour that somebody would think about us. It's therefore our duty of care, which is one of the legal provisions sitting around a university, is that you embrace that. So I want to now come to the second idea, which was this. So you're in there and you have to try and work the system. So put very briefly, that's this. You came through school, some of you went out to the professions, came here, some of you came straight through. But we do know that at the end of the degree, there's a life out there. And if you work the system well, you can build more than your qualification that actually will not carry quite the mana and strength that you possibly believe. What will carry the strength is the skills you have inside it and that you've built consciously around it. So, look at this. This is part of a trajectory. Okay, so one of the things that's really useful to look at doing is to build your transferable skills. So on one level, I can do this with a story. You know, the first 2 PhD graduates I ever worked with, one was a novelist and one was a textile designer. They both went out and were snapped up by a health research agency. Like that, within a few days, they'd seen their theses. Why? Because they could communicate really well. They could take complex knowledge and reshape it and deliver it in a way that other people couldn't. But the other thing that they found with them was that they could go into unstable ground. They didn't have to have things set out formulaically. There were other researchers in the unit who could do that, but these guys could move like this. They're both still there. Both of them had imagined their trajectory was somewhere else. Where they were valued was for the skills behind the thesis, or the skills that actually probably were the cause of the thesis being as good as it was. So that's their ability. They could cut to the baseline, they could focus and find the simple voice inside something. If you ever think about the 3-minute thesis, that skill is one of these allied skills. It's the ability to take something complex and show you have the intelligence and the articulate nature to be able to come to the essence and communicate it to a broad range of people. So when you're here, you're doing exactly that. You are expanding the thing from the insular monastic idea of the thesis. You're pushing it out because you're feeding yourself. Okay, and of course there's the ability to structure ideas really well. Okay, so the second one is this, is that, maybe we'll tell it again. You are going to be told? Yes, it is, right. Sorry, that's my slow dissolves. All right. This idea of being generous. So when you come here today and you're not speaking, you're here because you're looking out for somebody. You're here because you put your heart on the seat next to your brain. It's a very, very important thing because it builds, not only does it build a network, but it also, you're placing yourself in positions where you are opening yourself to ideas beyond your monastic undertaking. So that idea, so you're being generous to yourself. Instead of going, I'm going to be strategic and find out how little, I just have to find out the minimum I have to do to get this, you know, you're going to get a really crap degree. You might get a good mark, you're going to get a crap degree. When we open ourselves up and work generously in a field, and that's why these things are called conferences and symposiums, it's based on this understanding that the generosity in the field feeds the better researcher. Okay, so the other point that comes with that is that if you're giving a talk today, remember most people in the room are here because they want to help. They want to support you. That's why these people are here. And if you're not buggering off after you've done your talk and treating it, oh, yeah, I'm trying to be strategic here. If you're staying on for other people, then you're trying to do the same thing too. It's a very different beast. That's closer to scholarship. The earlier one is closer to strategy. They're very different beasts. Okay, and that's why where you get people who, that you strategically network and volunteer, and the reason for that is this. When you go out from here, the field you go into will be populated with other people who have known you. This is a little country, and internationally your specific discipline is a little country. So if you're a crap person, 20 years down the track, everyone remembers, I went to university with that one. They remember. Conversely, you get people who are employing and networking inside specific fields, whether it's geographical or intellectual, who remember the quality of your generosity, remember the quality of your care, remember the quality of your personal rigor. But those things are done here. It's not where you got your degree, it was what kind of person are you when you did your degree. If you function strategically, that you network and you volunteer, not just for yourself, but for the idea that you're trying to grow something on top of this monastic degree that is richer because that's the thing that's going forward, then you do a positive thing. And with that want to give you a little example. Just a couple of weeks ago, I'd worked with somebody who had done a thesis, and he did a very small thing that was actually quite a shock to the university. He wrote to the scholarships office and said, "Thank you for my scholarship." He showed gratitude. Now, because the degree is normally a monastic idea, a singular, you don't expect that. But when it happens, everybody's going to remember that guy forever. They remember the name and they remember the act. When we show generosity beyond the self, we're doing a social act and we're going to live in a society. You see people, some people who develop against the singularity, they develop this kind of generosity and caring and actually build reputations for themselves. When the person like that wants to come back in the university, people remember that small thing, that very small thing. But you ask yourself, I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up, it's all right. For every bit of assistance you've had, whether it was the scholarship or the care somebody took, how often do you go and say thank you? Because I would suggest that if you are doing that quite often, you're probably quite influential. Influence and gratitude are very closely linked things, very closely linked. Okay, so we're just going to do really quickly into number 3. All right, and this is about one of the other things I've found, that is if you've made somebody else's question your thesis because you were trying to impress them, or you're trying to get that person as your supervisor, there's quite a high chance that you're going to fatigue out. So one of the great things with the research degrees is in the whole trajectory of education, it is the time when you actually can take control over a body and knowledge of understanding that is important to you, that's in your heart. That's why normally I can tell someone who's going to do a great thesis, because you can feel the hunger when they come in to talk about it. They normally come and go, "Oh, this is a crap idea." You go, "Well, you wouldn't be here if it was a crap idea, so it's probably not. Okay, you might need to shape it up a bit, but it's probably not." You can hear it. You can hear the hunger behind it. The idea of being in love with your degree is this, with your question, is if you're not, when things get hard, you don't have many resources to draw on. If you are emotionally attached to the thing or are deeply attached by need to it, it will sustain you or resource you when things are tough. So doing one because it sounds good, you might get through if you're a strategist. You're unlikely to transform yourself very much. And basically the person who's most likely to care about you is you. So it's a fairly smart move to go, if I have this opportunity to spend 1 year or 4 years developing something of significance, I need to have something that is profoundly important to me. I will give that thought to push it to something that is profoundly important, whether it's linked to a value or to an emotional need or to whatever. So these are the other two that I've found where a degree will fall over. Where a person falls out of love with the question because it was only mutual attraction at the beginning. It wasn't love. There were no benefits in here. Okay, so it was not real. It was not a. I know it's not a normal way you talk about these things, but it wasn't a loved question. And the second one is this one, and we wrestle with this a lot. We're a room full of little overachievers. It's true. Okay. We wouldn't be here. In one way or another, we're overachievers. But we manage anxiety. And so what happens is oftentimes we can find our time polishing and polishing and polishing and polishing and polishing something, going, still I'll never be ready. A degree is never finished. A good thesis is never finished if it's any good. It's never finished. It will, because it's a living thing, there will always be potential for it going on. If it is closed down, you go, I've got it. You haven't. You have something else. You have a cardboard box with something rattling in it. The difficulty we face oftentimes is in our anxiety to do a really good job is we need the support of other people, what we would call critical friends, to say, you know, it's ready. It's ready, okay? The 14th, 100th and 1000th on the icing on the top is not there, but it is ready. Okay, so this is an interesting thing. This is some research from back in 1997. This is what examiners actually, there's two big bodies of research here. What examiners actually look for in research. So in your thesis, and what that's talking about is that there was a really interesting study done, I think 2012, where they took 30 examiners who collectively had examined over 300 theses to go, how do you mark these things? What counts and what doesn't count? And the thing that didn't count, the one that left the big scar at the beginning, was what was called sloppiness. Now that means that there was no evidence of care in the work. It was just, oh, this will be all right. So this is Mullins and Kiley, 2002. Okay, so sloppiness, that was things like your typographical errors or your mistakes in calculation, referencing, and footnotes. That's something that a technical person could sort, but you chose not to have it sorted. That was the bottom line. That was like when it's right down there in the mud. Okay, but when they were looking at what constituted a quality thesis this was across a wide range of disciplines, they were finding the first word that kept coming up was originality. They were looking for you in there. They were looking for the thing that you brought forward that hadn't been brought forward. Coherence and the sense of your autonomy and independence. This was the value of where they were saying the thesis had quality. This was your thesis, clearly your thesis. And this is interesting. When they came to the definitions of what people saw were exemplary theses, like the ones that bowl you back out of your chair, the descriptions normally for them were quite artistic. Now, this was from the science section of it. They talked about this is about science, an artistic endeavour where the student is designing the work and there is elegance of design of the synthesis and executions. There is creativity. So that is at the penultimate. That ability to, if you like, productively disobey, to move beyond ritual and formula, to go into a new area and bring the beauty of thought and discovery forward. Okay, so the normal approach, this is interesting. This is how they found the majority of examiners went to your thesis. They would read the abstract, the introduction, and the conclusion first. Then they check the references to go, how broadly have you scoped the field? Is everybody in there who I imagine would be in there? And then they go back and they read the thesis. So this was independent across these examiners. Now, it wasn't absolute, but it was by far the most common way. Then reading from cover to cover, etc. Now, they vary differently, but what it shows is how you open and close your thesis was really important. Really, really important. But here's something it's a comfort. Here's an arm around your shoulder. So they found that on general it takes, for a PhD, 3 to 4 days for an examiner to mark your thesis. They will spend 3 to 4 days with it. Okay, so this is on average. They also found that for a PhD, examiners are very reluctant to fail them. So in this study, out of 300 theses, only 10 reports of a fail. There may be major amendments, but normally they're saying if this has got to that stage, and your supervisors have said that it's ready, we're generally going to try and work with that. AUT is interesting because we have had 532 PhDs graduated and only 3 who were unsuccessfully completed. So we actually have quite a high rate of pass, but we're also very picky about who gets into what. And we monitor it. But the other thing I'd argue is because you're here. It's because you sit in here, because you are prepared to go beyond the monastic into something that's community, you get a better pathway through. Everything you join in and contribute to increases the quality of the pathway. So let me just come, because it's a cup of tea time. Okay, I'm finished with this idea. The thesis that you make, the thesis that you contribute, 30 years ago, when you put it in, it actually went into a dusty hole in the library and nobody looked at it again, including you. Today, we can enter your name and go click, and there is your thesis. Your grandchildren will read it. Your next employer will read it. Someone who you're going to B&B someone you're going to stay with holiday, will put your name in, and there will be your thesis, an indelible mark you cannot go back and change. It will be the testimony of your scholarship for your life and beyond. The ground has changed hugely. The more you do to resource it, the more you do to build communities of critical friends, the more you do to enrich your journey, the more you're going to be able to stand proudly with that. So, in closing, just 4 things, very quickly. It's likely you're going to be okay, even though you think you're not. It's likely you'll be okay, but you can look after yourself. Second thing, if you look after yourself by building and maintaining support, not just relying on your 2 supervisors, build and maintain support with your colleagues, with other people. The more you do that, the more you're likely to assure the first one. Contribute generously because you're setting a reputation for yourself that will go beyond here. It will travel out with the other people who are traveling out from the place with you. And don't be afraid to ask, because a university is essentially a realm of questions. Be aware, be a bit careful about people who start speaking in absolutes. They generally tend not to be the greatest scholars. Thank you.